Welcome everyone to this webinar. Today we are having our worldwide launch with Leading with Kindness. Many of you may ask, what is this? And why could leading with kindness be the next best leadership approach? Well, those are questions we would like to ask Roxana today. But before we go there, let's see what you should look out for. Because in the end of this presentation, there are some really good goodies for both corporations and for individuals, which you will find in our booth. But now, over to you, Roxana. Who are you? And tell us, why are you thinking leading with kindness is such a great idea?
Okay, so thank you so much, Peter. So I am the founder of All Personal, which is a leadership and team coaching and training company. And I do work with a lot of people leaders and team leaders and their teams to help them work better together and get into that high performance that we all talk about. And I think, talking about kind leadership, this is exactly what I think we've known all along, that kind leadership is the one kind of leadership that gives long-term results. And I think what happened most recently is that we've started to tap more into the kind leadership power. And we're gonna talk about that more. But that is, if you want long-term results, and the more we talk about attracting, retaining, and motivating employees on a long term, that's the key, kind leadership.
But tell me more. I understand now you're into both the online learning, you do the coaching, you did one of our great sellers, emotional intelligence, and now you're doing leading with. What really makes you tick doing these things?
It's all about, for me, it's all about sharing the knowledge, and this is how I feel I can make my best impact. And so that's why when I met you, I felt drawn into the chart learning solutions and creating some more impact with you.
Yeah, and you're doing such a great work. So let's look into how we can create impact with leading with kindness. So I'm quite interested to understand, so why is it important for leaders to be kind? And why do we need training to lead with kindness? So both those, get into it, yeah.
Yeah, so first of all, we know, and all of the studies have shown that kindness in leadership creates stronger connections between people. The more we can communicate better, and that means listening, knowing how to listen, knowing how to connect to what the other person is saying and perhaps what is not saying, that is creating stronger connections. And stronger connections build that trust between individuals, and that individual trust in turn creates psychological safety at the team level, at the organization level, which definitely improves collaboration and enhances loyalty. The more people feel that they can be making their impact in that organization and it is appreciated, they will feel included and motivated. And actually, one of the things that we get typically when we talk about kind leadership is the fact that it's associated with, is it a style that makes me look weak? And it's not the case. It's really not the case, because all of the studies around compassionate and kind leaders tell us that they're actually perceived as stronger and more competent, because they are more self-aware and self-confident. And that's what makes them able to replicate that and to share that self-confidence and to empower other people around them, which only builds on the respect that they get from other people.
Yeah. I got that question the other day. Is this a feminist thing, or is it for women and so on? But then I hear what you say, and when I did my own reflection, been working in stock listed companies on a high level, and I do see the higher up you go in the organization, CEOs and the manager, they're normally highly empathic people and passionate. They care for you. They always ask about you, your family, that they do remember. They are really interested in you as a person. So I think actually what you're saying here is it is a key for success, having that.
Yeah, it is.
So that means that you also believe people will respect you as a leader if you run with the philosophy of leading with kindness.
Yeah, they do, and it's not. Listen, it's not just about the people in your team. It's actually the everybody that you work with. We have a good example of that from Richard Branson. We all know, very famous CEO of Virgin.
Yeah.
And what he says in one of his books is that it is actually counterproductive to be ruthless. And he says, people tend to come back and do more business if they feel they have done well with you. Over the years, this attitude helped me to attract and keep good partners and staff. So again, this is a very successful business that used this model of leading with kindness and of taking care of employees first and connecting with employees and getting both information about what's going on, what works, what doesn't work. And that was super helpful for him as a CEO.
Yeah. So I actually had a dialogue this afternoon with a German company. It actually was a Swiss company, but they just recruited people from New Zealand. And what I recall that came up maybe a year ago and so on, because she had a very firm way of running the country in the pandemic. So what was all that about, and where did kindness come into that?
And I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because that's a great example. So of a prime minister, Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand, who had both a very firm and very empathetic kind of leadership. She actually remarked that one of the criticisms that she's faced is that she's not aggressive enough or not assertive enough, or maybe because she was empathetic, that meant that she was weak. She said she totally rebels against that. I refuse to believe that you cannot be both compassionate and strong. And I think what she walked that talk. She actually proved that you can be both compassionate and strong. And if you look at leaders around you that you respect and that you would follow anywhere they're going, we'll see that combination of compassionate and strong leadership.
Yeah, no, that is really an interesting thing here. But when I listen to you, I also realize now what we are aware about is that this launch is actually the first formal training on leading with kindness. But I've also done some studies recently, and I see there's so much articles coming up now in late autumn, January. I mean, we're just hearing it right now. So So what is in here? What treats are in leading with kindness? What are the key ingredients? Because it's not one thing.
Oh, no.
And of course, you could have great parents and you became a great kid and grown up to a very kind person, but that does not mean you're a great leader automatically. So a little bit leading with kindness. What kind of ingredients are in there?
So there are, and again, these kind of ingredients and the amounts of these ingredients will definitely vary from one person to another.
Yeah.
But leading with kindness means adding an ingredient of generosity, of sharing and expanding that generosity towards others that you work with. And that means also, for example, I'm being generous when I listen to you and I care about what happened and what made that project perhaps not as successful as we were expecting it to be. And I'm expanding that generosity onto you because I'm really genuinely curious to find out what went on rather than blaming you. So generosity is a big ingredient. Empathy and compassion, these are extremely important ingredients in leading with kindness, because how else can we connect with one another unless we can add that empathy and compassion?
But can you learn empathy and compassion? I mean, I know you're educate training people in this, but I thought either you were empathic or you were not, a little bit stubborn, and I don't know, but can you learn these things?
Yes, these are what I like to call skills muscles. So it's all about the practice, and they're both actually part of the larger emotional intelligence context, right? And emotional intelligence, we also know that is learnable and teachable. So these are all, like all other skills, you can learn them, and it's all in the practice. So the more I intentionally want to develop that empathy, for example, the more I learn how to listen better, and perhaps even improve some of my coaching skills as a leader, that will help me practice that empathy skill muscle more and develop it. So yes, definitely you can develop those skills.
So what you're saying here, key ingredients is listening, because you care also when you listen. You care about that person because you show respect. You have the emotional intelligence. We have the way we communicate, which is a big thing today. And we mentioned
coaching and mentoring are big parts of leading with kindness, especially with leading the newer generations. And I'm talking about the millennial generation, the Gen Zs as well. These are generations that are used to learning from everywhere around them, and they're really big on role models. So the more you can be a role model to them, the more they will respect you and be productive and be happy at work and give those results on a longer term. So we're looking at the kind of leadership that, again, is going to give us the results that we want on a long term. And that means knowing how to lead the new generations as well.
And that is so interesting. I slid through to the next slide, but let's keep where we were a little bit, because the new generation is different from when we were brought up, even though we catch up fairly way, but there's a different way of learning. There's a different way of getting motivated. There's a different way of getting the drive. And most important, I see today, there's a totally different movement when you look at work and so on. I just saw the statistics now from the US, and you may have better statistics than me, but there's such a big churn right now in the companies, which is causing hurdles. And today, the US unemployment is only 3.5. And if you're losing 20%, up to 20% of your employees over a year, I mean, that's ridiculous. So where in all this comes leadership with kindness into play?
So what leadership and kind leadership does is it helps us be more flexible and adapting in our way of thinking and in our way of working. So when I choose to lead with kindness, so with compassion and with empathy, and with generosity, and again, I will get that curiosity of finding out what makes you the best at work, what helps you perform best at work, what are some ways of working that you want to bring into the workplace, and how can we adapt to them. The type of kind leadership, when we talk about it, we talk about understanding how we can be agile in our leadership style. And that is definitely something that is going to be helpful in leading all of these newer generations that look at leaders. For example, there's a study that shows that the millennial generation, because of the way that they used to learn and connect with their teachers, for example, where they had this dialogue about everything that was happening, they see leaders as coaches. So the more you can help me understand where I can go and how I can grow, the more I will respect you. For Generation Z, for example, they look at leaders as somebody who is one of us, and one of us means not somebody from their generation, but somebody they can connect to, and somebody that understands them and that they can have a dialogue with. So what kind leadership does is it helps us really connect to others around us, and especially to the teams that we're leading, so that we can boost that creativity and innovation and engagement and motivation. And of course, in turn, that is going to give results. And look what the research shows. Like, you get increased sales, increased customer loyalty, increased motivation, improvement in creativity and innovation and in well-being, reducing attrition and lowering all of those costs that we're dreading, right? Marketing, recruiting, and training costs. Because
these are real outputs which companies can expect to actually invest in doing things, because what all the things you bring up here, that's really into the training also, because I've had the fortune to do some previews of these things. Okay, but let's then have it there, because it's so exciting. So we'll talk a little bit on how we can get the effect out of this. If I'm sitting as responsible for a L&D or part of L&D, or maybe I'm in the management team, and I really would like to have this ongoing, this dialogue and this training in my organization. So how should I approach it? That's maybe
that is where I know that you have a better answer than I do. So I'm gonna hand that over to you, Peter, because start learning solutions, they really are that, they're long-term solutions. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, and I know since you are actually in behind many of the developments here, and you've been working with what we call the performance assurance methodology. And that's a learning methodology which combines the online learning with the live or virtual coaching. And just so if we take then leading with kindness, of course, then let's say we have a group of 10 people, then they would start doing their online learning after a kickoff. So we all have the same objectives on where to head. They'll do the knowledge checks, but then it really kicks in, because there we have something called job aids or application activities, which we can put 2 and 2 people together, and they start to discussing and getting the different views. Because in the online learning, they actually learn the best practices, but now it's about applying that into my own situation. And having this peer-to-peer dialogue is just a great tool. If it's a bigger company, maybe we have 50, 100, 1,000 of learners in there, then we would normally create a learning community, maybe using Slack, and have sharing information about that, so we all could feel that, yeah, we are part of this, and we get the good examples. We maybe read another article. But in the end of all this training, so when you're doing the leading with kindness, then we normally end that with group coaching. And the group coaching is really where the coach has additional material to ask, additional questions, and get that team to reflect, discuss different situations they have been into, maybe some awkward situation they've been into, they should have done differently, or they had a boss who was bossy, and all these things. So they actually see the difference, feel the difference, and can actually get their own way of being kind leaders. So this methodology is a great way for long-term learning. So when you really want to have results sticking in your mind. So I just wanted to mention that.
I want to add something to that, because I can't help it. My background is corporate learning and development. So I totally resonate with what you said, but this is really, it's not just training. It's not a one-off thing. It's training and coaching, and your model, or where you have the peer-to-peer coaching, when you create the community, and then you have the group coaching as well, that helps embed those practices into the day-to-day activities. And that's where the actual learning sticks. That's where you're helping people who take the training actually implement and apply those things at work. So they get to master those skills. It's all about, it's like going to the gym. You're creating that environment where they can practice and really strengthen those skills.
So thank you so much for joining on this worldwide launch of Leading with Kindness. And thank you so much, Roxana, for today.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you as well.